Hello students, welcome to this session with Stuti Academy. I'm your teacher Pranali ma'am and I will be taking you through today's session on the topic Letter to God. Now, Letter to God is a wonderful story written by G.L. Fuentes. Gregorio Lopez Fuentes was a Mexican novelist, journalist, and was one of the chroniclers in the Mexican Revolution. Now, he's written this story about a farmer's unshakable faith in God and about the calamities that he faces. Okay, so now let's have a quick look at the learning objectives. We are here to help you sensitize with the problems that others may face and to also help you empathize with their problems, to understand the value of unshakable faith, and also to understand the theme of this particular story. Overall, we want you to help others, empathize with them, and to also inculcate the value of faith and confidence against all odds. Okay, let's have a look at the introduction of the story. This particular story, A Letter to God, is written by G.L. Fuentes. He was born in 1897 and lived until 1966, a Mexican novelist, poet, and a famous journalist. This is an interesting story which depicts about a farmer who lives in a rural area in Mexico. A story of an innocent farmer named 𝐿𝐤𝐥𝐞 whose crop was destroyed by a hailstorm. And it also revolves around his ardent faith in God. And he wants God to come to his rescue and help him out. Now, this story also gives us a description about how others empathize with him and come to help him, and also tells us how he interprets that help. Now, this story is a satire trying to tackle the reality which exists in our society. Okay, I'm going to quickly take you through the summary of this particular story. Now, 𝐿𝐤𝐥𝐞 is a farmer, who lives in a valley. Now, his house is on the top of a hill, and he does farming of corns, and his family is dependent on the crop for their livelihood, for their money and for food, and also to buy new crops when they sell the current crops. So corn farming is their livelihood. Now, for these corns to have a good harvest for this particular field, his field, he needs water. And the only way that he could get water for his crops is rain. So, rain is the only source of food for the earth. But what happens is there is a hailstorm, and that hailstorm wrecks the field. So 𝐿𝐤𝐥𝐞 is completely devastated. He doesn't know what to do. He's sad because his family will not have anything to eat. He doesn't know what to do next. So he thinks what to do. Then he comes with an idea that he will ask help from God. He is a stout believer of God, has full faith in God. So what he does is he decides to write a letter to God and asks God for 100 pesos. Now these 100 pesos will help him for new crops, will help him for his livelihood until the crops grow. So he wants 100 pesos, sufficient enough for the next crop. Now this particular letter, 𝐿𝐤𝐥𝐞 takes it to the post office and mails it. This letter is found by the postmaster. The postmaster, a kind-hearted man, he reads the letter and first he's mused. Who is this man writing a letter to God? But when he reads the letter, he feels motivated. He feels that it is his moral responsibility and he empathizes with 𝐿𝐤𝐥𝐞 and thinks about helping him out. So what does this postmaster does is he collects money and he tries to help him out so that the faith and the belief of this farmer is intact. The postmaster, what he does is he contributes a part of his salary, okay, and collects money from his colleagues who willingly contribute and do this charity. Now, however, they all could only collect 70 pesos. So what they do is, at least they have 70 pesos, if not 100. So they wrap it up in an envelope and seem like this 70 pesos are from God itself. They want to keep their name anonymous, don't want to reveal it. But when this letter with 70 pesos reaches 𝐿𝐿𝐵, he is shocked. He says 70 pesos. So instead of 100, which he was expecting, he gets 70. Now, instead of thinking that he has 70, he thinks that God has sent him less amount. But in fact, he does not think that way. What he thinks is, God did send him 100 pesos, but the postmaster and the people in the post office took away 30 pesos. So instead of being courteous, he again writes another letter to God and says, "Oh God, I'm disappointed. Now I distrust the employees at the post office." And he writes to God that they stole the remaining amount. Now he doesn't know what these people in the post offices have done for him. So now let's look at this story extract by extract. I will read this extract out to you and then explain it to you. The house, the only one in the entire valley, sat on the crest of a low hill. From this height, one could see the river and the field of a ripe corn dotted with flowers that always promised a good harvest. The only thing the earth needed was a downpour or at least a shower. Throughout the morning, 𝐿𝐿𝐵, who knew his fields intimately, had done nothing else but to see the sky towards the northeast. Now, let's go through this extract. Let me explain it to you. So, the important points that we need to understand here is the house was situated on the top of a hill. And it was a solitary house, a single house. So, from the hill, you could see the field of the corn and dotted with flowers. Now, dotted with flowers means there are corns going to bloom from those flowers. Those corns are going to come. So, initially the flowers come in and then the corns. So, that is why it is said dotted with flowers meant the flowers are scattered across, right? 𝐿𝐿𝐵 wished he had enough food after the harvest. So what was 𝐿𝐿𝐵 hoping for? He will have enough food after the harvest. So these flowers were giving him hope that they will give a very good harvest. But what these flowers or this crop needed was rain, water. So the earth, the farm needed water to survive. So they needed rain, either some heavy rain or at least a shower so that, they get nourishment and the harvest is healthy. So farming is always a profession of hope because the farmers are mostly dependent on the rain, the natural source of food for the soil. Now, what are the questions that come in the exam here? Let's have a quick look. So, where was 𝐿𝐿𝐵's house situated? We have 4 options here. Now, remember the extract, okay? Bottom of the hill, top of the hill, top of a plateau, or in a city. Now, let's eliminate the options that are not there or the wrong options. Now, in a city, will you have a farm in a city? Usually no. On a plateau, so what was the extract? On the crest of a hill. So no plateau. Crest of a hill means, yes, exactly. Crest of a hill means top of a hill. It cannot be bottom. So the answer here is top of a hill. Okay? Yes. So you need to eliminate the wrong answers and go for the right one. So now let's also understand the different types of rains that farmers face. Now these are similar to each other but still slightly different. Now in the extract, 𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐞 was hopeful about either a downpour or at least a shower. Now what are the different types of rains? The different types of rains here are, we have torrential rains. So what is torrential rain? Heavy rain that pours down very rapidly and can come in huge quantities. Okay, it's really very heavy. Downpour. Now what is a downpour? It is again a rainstorm that comes very suddenly and can cause flooding. Heavy rains. Heavy rains again come down quite strong and they can make you wet very quickly. Thunderstorm. Thunderstorm is violent, short-lived, not too long, but very violent and disturbs everything around and comes along with lightning and thunder and gushes of wind. Okay? Now drizzle or a shower. Drizzle basically is something that comes as light rain and fine drops, but is still sufficient for the earth to quench the thirst and to give a good harvest. Now, if you look at the first three, these are synonyms, slightly different, but still have more or less the same meaning. Torrential rains, heavy rain, downpour, again rainstorm, which again means heavy rains. Difference is torrential rains come in great quantities, rapidly. Downpour comes suddenly and can cause flooding. Heavy rains again come strong, very strong, and they can wet you quickly. So thunderstorm is different because it comes along with lightning and it comes with thunder and gusts of wind. And a drizzle or a shower is something that is light rain that is pleasant and can quench the thirst of the earth. Now the questions associated with it. Now always remember, when you are reading a story or understanding a lesson, you have to also remember and learn the questions associated with it. Now these are the questions that have come in the past years. If you understand these questions, you don't need to learn them by heart. You need to understand them. If you understand these questions, anybody asks you the questions, you'll still be able to answer them correctly. Now this question is, what was the only thing that the earth needed according to 𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐞? What did the earth need? A shower, a snowfall, strong winds, or sunlight? Now, what was the thing that 𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐞 was unable to provide? And what was the thing that he was expecting from nature? Was he expecting sunlight? Well, sun does rise every day. So he was getting, his crop was getting sunlight. Strong winds? He definitely didn't want strong winds because he didn't want the crop to go. So he didn't want the crop to get spoiled, yeah? Snowfall? Again, he doesn't want the crop to get spoiled, so no snowfall. Yes, you are right. Shower. So he was expecting a downpour or at least for a minimum a shower. So shower is the right answer here. Okay? Now, so the next extract. Now, I have bifurcated this in 3 paragraphs. However, it's one extract and I will explain it to you. First, I'm going to read and then I will explain it to you. Now, we are really going to get some water, woman. The woman who was preparing supper replied, "Yes, God willing." The older boys were working in the field while the smaller ones were playing near the house until the woman called to them all, "Come for dinner." Now, this is the conversation between 𝐿𝐿𝐴 and his wife. And his wife is preparing supper and she calls out to the boys. The older ones are playing in the, the older ones are working in the field and the smaller ones who really don't know what to do are playing. And so it was during that meal, just as 𝐿𝐿𝐴 predicted, big drops of rain began to fall. In the northeast, huge mountains of clouds could be seen approaching. The air was fresh and sweet. The man went out for no other reason than to have the pleasure of feeling rain on his body. And when he returned, he exclaimed, "These aren't raindrops falling from the sky. They are new coins. The big drops are 10-cent pieces, and the little ones are 5." So he went out to feel the rain because he was happy that it's going to rain and help for his harvest. So if you see in the second paragraph, it is in the northeast, there were huge mountains of clouds that were coming. And so 𝐿𝐿𝐴 went out in the rain to have the pleasure of feeling the rain on his body. And then 𝐿𝐿𝐴 compared the raindrops with money. So he said they were round in shape. That's why he called them coins. And good rain means good money, good income. A word in the extract says coming closer, means they are approaching. So they are coming towards the field. Huge mountains of clouds. Now the raindrops were compared with new coins. And the big ones, the big raindrops were 10-cent pieces and the smaller ones were 5-cent pieces. Now the questions that has come in the past years. Where did 𝐿𝐿𝐴 expect the downpour to come from? Now what direction were the clouds coming from? Was it north? Was it the northeast? Or was it the northwest or the southwest? Think about it. And the correct answer is northeast. So as it is in the extract, he saw mountains of clouds coming from the northeast. Okay? And they were big drops of rains. And he went out to feel the rain. And the air was sweet and fresh. Now the next extract. Now let's understand what 𝐿𝐿𝐴 is feeling and what happens next. With a satisfied expression, he regarded the field of ripe corn with its flowers draped in a curtain of rain. But suddenly a strong wind began to blow, and along with the rain, very large hailstorms began to fall. These truly did resemble silver coins, new silver coins. The boys, exposing themselves to the rain, ran out to collect the frozen pearls. "It's really getting bad now," exclaimed the man. "I hope this passes quickly, because Hailstorm ain't going to help him." So it did not pass quickly. For an hour the hail rained on the house, the garden, the hillside, the cornfield, on the whole valley. The field was white as if it was covered with salt. Now, why is he comparing the hailstorms with salt? The reason is salt will damage your crop, and so does the hailstorm. So that white looked like salt. Now, 𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴, when he saw that the rain suddenly turned into hailstorms, he was feeling bad about it. Now, he said, it's really going to get bad. And then he hoped that it passes quickly. So, some hailstorm will not damage the crop so much if it rains and it goes off quickly. But then this did not happen. For an hour there was hailstorm all across the houses and the fields and the valley, so everything was almost destroyed. So 𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴 was very much satisfied when he initially looked at the field, because he saw the flowers were getting drenched in the rain, and he knew that once the earth was wet, there will be a good harvest. The crop will grow and flourish, and there will be a good harvest. But suddenly, his hope and his happiness turned into sorrow. So suddenly, along with the rains, there were hailstorms. And so hailstorms started falling, and they were really looking like silver coins. So what he said, that the rain is looking like coins, it happened. It truly happened, and they were really looking like silver coins. And the hailstones looked like pearls. So when they fall, the children were collecting them, and they looked like white pearls. So 𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴 felt very sad. Obviously, if your crop is going to get devastated or damaged, then you are going to be sad. So the hailstorm wrecked the entire crop. Now, this catastrophe devastated him. He didn't know what to say, what to do, and the whole field looked like white salt. The word in the extract, draped, means covered. So it was covered with salt, all through and through. Now this is exactly how a hailstorm looks. See, if you see those white balls, those are falling looking like silver coins, that those are the hailstorms that are falling on the crops and spoiling the corn crop. Now the questions here. What did 𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴 compare the large raindrops with? So initially it was raining and the raindrops were large. So he compared them with what? Silver coins, pearls, diamonds, new coins. What did he compare them? Did he say they were diamonds, new coins, or pearls, or silver coins? Well, the answer is new coins, because they were shiny and bright. Now, the family is devastated because immediately after the rain started, there was hailstorm, and the hailstones started pouring down like white pearls, and everything looked like salt covered. So the field was draped in salt, and for an hour it just poured hailstorms on his house, on his field, and across the valley. So everything was spoiled. So the family is devastated. They don't know what to do. So now let's look at the next extract. Not a leaf remained on the trees. The corn was totally destroyed. The flowers were gone from the plants, and 𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴's soul was filled with sadness. When the storm had passed, he stood in the middle of the field and said to his sons, a plague of locusts would have left more than this. So even a huge plague of locusts would have left some crops for them so that they could have had some income. But this hailstorm has left them nothing. The hail has left nothing. This year we have no corn. That night was a sorrowful one. All our work for nothing? There's no one who can help us. We all go hungry this year. So everyone in the family was sad. 𝐿𝐿𝐵 was devastated. He didn't know how to feed his family. He didn't know what to do next. So what did 𝐿𝐿𝐵 do? Now let's understand this extract first, and then we'll move on to the next one. 𝐿𝐿𝐵 became very sad as all the corn was completely destroyed. All the leaves were gone, all the flowers were gone, and the trees were fallen to the ground. The flowers on the corn crop, they all went off due to the hailstorm. So the storm, it stormed and destroyed everything. So when the storm stopped, 𝐿𝐿𝐵 was totally disappointed, and he told his sons that, even a plague of locusts, a group of locust insects who eat the crops and who are dangerous to the crops, they still would have left something for them to eat, or for their income. If they sell it, they get some money out of it. But the hailstorm has left absolutely nothing. So there's nothing left. So he said to his family that there would be no corn this year, because with the hailstorm, it was not possible to have a harvest. Because for the crops to grow and come to a harvest, it takes months and months, and then that particular year goes by. So this year, there will be no corn. And so the night was gloomy and sorrowful. So 𝐿𝐿𝐵 had the fear that this family will remain hungry that year. Think about the situation that a father, a husband, a man of the house faces when he cannot bring food to the table, when he cannot help his children survive, when everybody goes hungry. There's no income in the house. So that's why 𝐿𝐿𝐵 was very sad at this loss. Now, what does 𝐿𝐿𝐵 do? Yes, 𝐿𝐿𝐵 thinks what to do. Now, 𝐿𝐿𝐵 was a farmer, but a farmer with a lot of faith, undeterring, unwavering faith in God. So he decides to write a letter to God. Now, this extract will help you understand what and how he comes to this idea about writing a letter to God. But in the hearts of all who lived in that solitary house in the middle of the valley, there was a single hope: help from God, God Almighty. So, don't be so upset, even though it seems like a total loss. Remember, no one goes hungry. That's what they say. No one dies of hunger. All through the night, 𝐿𝐿𝐵 thought only of this one hope. He was a stout believer, and he had faith, and he knew that God is there. God will help him. So he was a hard-earning farmer. He worked very hard to, do everything that he could, but the forces of nature destroyed his crop. So now his only hope was God. So what he did was, although 𝐿𝐿𝐵 was a hard-working man, he also knew how to read and write. Now, in those days, not all farmers had the privilege to learn and get educated. So they did not know how to read and write, not all of them. So that was, I'm sorry, I'm going to start reading this here. That's what they say. no one dies of hunger. All through the night, 𝐿𝐴𝐻 thought only of his one hope, the help of God, whose eyes, as he has been instructed, see everything, even what is deep in one's conscience. 𝐿𝐴𝐻 was an ox of a man, working like an animal in the fields, but he also knew how to write. As I said, not all farmers were privileged in getting to learn and write and get knowledge, but 𝐿𝐴𝐻 knew how to write. So the following Sunday, so the next day was a Sunday, the following Sunday, at daybreak, he began to write a letter to God, which he himself would carry to the town and place in the mail. So he was going to take that letter to the post office and put it in the mailbox. It was nothing less than a letter to God. So this is how the letter to God comes in existence. From devastation to hope. Understand the journey of this farmer, a hard-working farmer who has grew crops, but who is dependent on nature, on rain, and nature comes very strongly. And instead of rain, there is hailstorms, and the hailstorms destroy the crop. So he's devastated, his family is devastated, there's nothing to eat, no income in the house. But in spite of such a situation, 𝐿𝐴𝐻 has his faith in God. He knows God is there to help him out in every situation. So now we need to understand what the beliefs of the family were. So the family believed in the existence of God, and we all should also. There is a superpower, which is God, which will help us, guide us, guard us. So the family knew that God is surely going to help them. And his wife consoled him and asked him not to get worried, although the crops were completely destroyed. And according to her, no one dies of hunger. So what she believed in was God will not let you die and will not let you die of hunger. So 𝐿𝐴𝐻 agreed with her. Now 𝐿𝐴𝐻, what he was also a stout believer. He had full faith in God. So he agreed with her. But 𝐿𝐴𝐻 thought, what should I do so that God will help me? Throughout the night, 𝐿𝐴𝐻 thought, and throughout the night, 𝐿𝐴𝐻 had a ray of hope to get help from God. So being a strong believer of God, 𝐿𝐴𝐻 thought God could see everyone's minds and heart, and 𝐿𝐴𝐻 was a diligent farmer. He did his job well. So although he was a farmer, he also knew how to write. He was learned. Okay, he was educated so that he could read and write. So he planned to write a letter to God and post it in the mailbox. Now let's understand 𝐿𝐴𝐻's letter to God. Now here comes the most important part, the letter that he writes to God. And let us understand what he thinks when he's writing this letter. And after he posts the letter, what actually happens. So let me read the extract to you. God, he wrote, if you don't help me, my family and I will go hungry this year. I need 100 pesos in order to sow my field again and to live until the crop comes, because the hailstorm, so on and so forth. He wrote to God on the envelope, put the letter inside, and still troubled went to town. So there's a paragraph that he wrote, and what he wrote was, my family will go hungry if you don't give me 100 pesos. So he's asking help from God, and he's saying, please send 100 pesos. Okay, so he wrote on the envelope to God. He addressed the letter to God, and he took the letter to the town. And although he was still troubled, he took the letter to the town. At the post office, he placed a stamp on the letter and dropped it into the mailbox. One of the employees, who was a postman and also helped at the post office, went to his boss laughing. So he was laughing heartily and showed him the letter to God. Never in his career as a postman has he known that address. So no postman knew where to send this letter because they did not know the address of God. So the postmaster, a fat and amiable fellow, also broke out laughing. But almost immediately he turned serious and tapping the letter on his desk, commented, "What faith! I wish I had the faith of the man who wrote this letter, starting up a correspondence with God." So the postmaster says, "Wow, what faith!" Initially they laugh, but later on the postmaster realizes that this letter is come from a farmer, a poor farmer, who has stout faith in God and who is asking for help. And the postmaster thinks, I wish I had that faith. So, what happens now? I'm going to explain it to you. In the letter, Lencho communicated to God, told him about his situation, his poverty-stricken situation. Because the crops were destroyed, Lencho was devastated and had nothing to eat, no food, no income. He also didn't have money to buy new crops so that he could, you know, do the fields and he could harvest again. So, in the letter, Lencho is asking for 100 pesos. He is asking enough for his survival until the next year. Lencho is a very hard-working man. He's an ox of a man. So he will not ask more. He's asking only enough for how much he needs. So 100 pesos to regenerate new crops, to, sow the fields and to plow. And then when the harvest comes, so till the time the harvest comes, he also needed some money for his livelihood so that his children could eat, he could get food at home. So, and along with that, for, as I said, for surviving and until the next harvest is ready. On the envelope, because he did not know the address of God, he wrote to God. He just wrote to God. And he had full faith, full belief that this letter is definitely going to reach God. So he also put a stamp on it. So he didn't want to, want the letter to just go in the bin. He wanted the letter to reach its destination, which is to God. But he did not know the address. However, he made sure he put a stamp on it. And then he dropped it in the mailbox. So the postman glanced at the letter and was surprised. Now, anybody, when you look for something like this, people don't have so much faith in God. So they laugh. So the same thing happened. So the postman laughed. The postman said, "Oh my God, this man does not know the address of God and he's writing a letter to God." So the postman takes this letter to the postmaster. So initially, the postmaster also has a good laugh. But then the postmaster realizes that this is a serious situation. And the farmer has written this letter to God because he has faith in God. He believes that God is there to help him out. So then the postmaster becomes serious. And the postmaster says, the postmaster was a fat man, fat and amiable man. So friendly, amiable means friendly and pleasant personality. And so initially after having a good laugh, he thinks that, no, we have to take this seriously. He turns serious and he appreciates the farmer for his faith in God. So he also wishes that he has this faith, that level of faith in him towards God. And so he decides to help him. Now, what happens next? Let's have a look at it. So, in order not to shake the writer's faith in God, the postmaster came up with an idea, an answer to the letter. But when he opened it, it was evident that to answer this letter, answer 8, he needed some more than goodwill. So just goodwill and just, praying to God that this farmer gets some help, there was something more that was required. Goodwill, ink, and paper. But he stuck to his resolution. So the postmaster was determined to help 𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿. He asked for money from his employees. He asked for his employees to contribute. He said, now this man has stout belief, faith that God will help him, and we need to keep that faith going, because faith can move mountains. This faith will help this man to harvest, to sow seeds, and to have food for his family. So he asked his employees to contribute. And he also gave a part of his salary, because he had his family, he had to eat, he couldn't give the whole, so he gave a part of his salary. And several friends, he asked them and they obliged. So several friends of his were obliged to give something for an act of charity. A lot of times we do charity, we put money in a donation box, but this time they were doing charity for a specific person. Although they were doing charity, they wanted to remain anonymous. It was impossible for him to gather together 100 pesos. Now, postmaster and postmen, they all did not have so much money that it could make 100 pesos. So he was able to send the farmer only a little more than half. Now, half of 100 is 50, and a little more than half. So he put the money in the envelope addressed to 𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿, and with it a letter containing only a single word, God, because he did not want to disclose his identity, and he wanted to do the charity as well. Along with the charity, he wanted 𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿 to have his faith. So he wrote a single word, God. Now what happens really here? Now, in order to keep the faith of the person, or faith of this farmer, the postmaster thinks of an idea. He thinks that everybody should contribute the money, collect 100 pesos. But he was not so successful. He was close by, but not completely. So the postmaster could not get 100 pesos. So he asked money from his colleagues, who gave some, and he also gave a portion of his salary. So many of his friends agreed to give money as charity to help the poor farmer survive until next year, and so that his faith in God is restored, is strong, and keeps going. So it was difficult for the postmaster to collect 100 pesos, whatever the desired amount of the farmer was. However, they were able to collect 70 pesos, more than half, a little more than half. So he put that money in the envelope, and he wrote the address of 𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿, and in the letter, inside, he just wrote one word, God, because he wanted 𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿 to believe that this particular money has come from God himself. So he wrote the word God as a signature of God to make 𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿 believe that the money was sent by Almighty. He did not want to break this faith. If you look at this photo, on this picture, it shows that there is a donation box for 𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿, and the postmaster and the employees are collecting donation for him. So trust in the Lord with all your heart. So they want to keep 𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿's faith going, and they also want to help him. So whatever their capacity is, they are putting in the donation in the charity box. And so So now let's look at the next extract. The following Sunday, 𝐿𝐿𝐴 came a bit earlier than usual to ask if there was a letter for him. So 𝐿𝐴 was excited. He wanted to know whether God had replied. It was the postman himself who handed the letter to him, while the postmaster, experiencing the contentment of a man who has performed a good deed, looked on from his office. So the postmaster was feeling happy about the charity that he's done. And so he was looking from his office. 𝐿𝐴 showed not the slightest surprise on seeing the money. Such was his confidence. So he had stout faith, undeterring faith, and belief in God, and he was not surprised by looking at the money. But he became angry when he counted the money. God could not have made a mistake, nor could he have denied 𝐿𝐴 what he had requested. Immediately, 𝐿𝐴 went up to the window to ask for a paper and ink. So what happened? 𝐿𝐴 counted the money. As in the previous extract, it was not 100 pesos, it was 70 pesos. So 𝐿𝐴 counted and he realized that it is not the amount that he had asked for. So he was angry. But he had full faith in God. So he knew that God cannot deny him this money. And he knew that God has sent him 100 pesos. He believed in it. So he immediately went to the window and he started writing another letter to God. So on the public writing table, he started to write with much wrinkling of his brow, with a lot of anger and a lot of frustration caused by the effort he had to make to express his idea. When he finished, he went to the window to buy a stamp, which he licked, and then affixed on the envelope with a blow of his fist. The moment the letter fell into the mailbox, the postmaster went to open it. Now the postmaster was excited to see what 𝐿𝐴 wrote, because they did a deed of charity. They gave their salaries and donated to 𝐿𝐴. So they wanted to see how thankful he was, how happy he was. So the postmaster went to open it. It said, God, of the money that I asked for, only 70 pesos reached me. Send me the rest, since I need it very much. But don't send it to me through the mail, because the post office employees are a bunch of crooks. 𝐿𝐴. Now look. These people have done charity for 𝐿𝐴 because they want to help a poor farmer. Now this farmer, instead of being thankful about the amount he got and trying to survive and do what he can do best, he's angry because he has undeterring and blind faith in God. So his faith, he knows that God has sent him 100 pesos. But he thinks that the postmaster and the post office employees are a bunch of crooks and they have taken the remaining amount. So he says, next time, don't send it to me by mail. So now the explanation goes. On the following Sunday, 𝐿𝐴 went to the post office and asked if there was a letter for him. So 𝐿𝐴 was excited. So last Sunday, he posted a letter. He waited for a week. He said, okay, God has to give me money. So he waited for a week. And then he went the following Sunday to the post office and he asked whether there was a letter for him. The postmaster gave the letter and looked at 𝐿𝐴 from his office. Now, the postman who had picked up the initial letter returned the new letter to 𝐿𝐴 and the postmaster looked at 𝐿𝐴 from his office. The postmaster was satisfied that he did a good job, he did a charity. So 𝐿𝐴 did not appear to be surprised. He was confident that God will send him money, so he wasn't surprised with the money. Now, because he was a firm believer of God, what he did was he started counting the money. When he counted the money, he became furious and he found out that the money was lesser than his expectation. Now, the money was collected by the postmaster and the employees. Now, they contributed what they could. They could not reach 100 pesos. But 𝐿𝐴𝐿, having strong belief in God, he knew that God will not make this mistake. He believed that God has sent him 100 pesos and he refused to accept that this could be only 70 pesos. He wrote to God that he must have sent 100 pesos, but the office employees, the post office employees, are a bunch of crooks and they must have taken the remaining 30 pesos. So he thinks that these are no good people. These people are thieves or crooks and who stole his money. So 𝐿𝐴𝐿 replied to God asking to send the remaining money. Now the conclusion of this story. Letter to God basically is a faith that a person has in Almighty, that a person has in God, believes that God will take him out of all his calamities. A person who is hardworking and who is toiled and who's seen the crop, but because of a natural calamity, because of the hailstorms, all his crop was destroyed. Now 𝐿𝐴𝐿 was devastated and he did not know what to do. So he decided to ask God for help because he knew God was the provider. He believed, his family believed, that God will never let them go hungry. So what we have learned from this lesson is letter to God is about God who has the power to move the mountains to satisfy the needs of people who believe in him, who have faith in him. However, we should also always observe and also note that there is humanity in this world. There are people who empathize with others' problems. There are people who are sensitive, who understand, and who want to keep this faith in God going. They do not want people to lose faith and then just become rude or, lose humanity or lose hope. So there are people who do charity, who try to help people anonymously in the name of God. So God basically lies within us all. God is a person, God is a hope who is within us all trying to help each other, and that is humanity. So this is a beautiful story that sketches about the deep faith of 𝐿𝐴𝐿 and how the post office people, the postmaster and the post office employees, they contribute in order to help 𝐿𝐴𝐿 towards his next crop and his livelihood, so until he gets the harvest. But because of their current situation, they are unable to send 100 pesos. But they send whatever they can. There is humanity in them. And they contribute for this man who is in crisis from their pockets. So now we have gone through this beautiful story of 𝐿𝐴𝐿 and his faith, who is a hardworking guy who also has education, so he knows how to write. But a hailstorm destroys his crop. And then we have seen how his faith helps him, gives him hope, and he writes a letter to God. And then the postmaster and the people, with all their kindness and their humanity, try to help 𝐿𝐴𝐿 so that his faith keeps up and they contribute as much as they can. Now, I would suggest if you need to go through the presentation, you can go through the presentation again and also go ahead and take membership, full membership of our course so that you can go ahead and get the revision notes, the practice questions so that your topic is strong and you gain full marks. So Stuti Academy is here to help you, and we are always going to see that you excel in your career. Thank you.